This is terrible legislation. This is unnecessary legislation. This is dangerous legislation.
Republicans in the Senate slam a bill sponsored by a fellow Republican that would have allowed drivers to touch their cell phones while stopped at a stoplight or stop sign. Good evening and welcome to Lawmakers on this day 26 of the legislative session. I'm Donna Lowry. We'll have more on the hands-free cell phone bill in a moment, and we'll talk about several bills lawmakers hope to keep in play as crossover day approaches next Tuesday. Crossover day is the deadline to have legislation pass out of at least one chamber to have the possibility of becoming a law. Among those still in the works, gambling legislation. Opponents of those bills joined some of the lawmakers at the Capitol for a press conference to list why they don't want it in this state. On the show, legislators from each side of the aisle on why they think some forms of gambling are good for Georgia. Also, we'll talk to a lawmaker who wants to give a break to military retirees for certain taxable income. And another lawmaker will tell us about a bill to commemorate the original 33, the freed slaves in Georgia who became the first black elected lawmakers in the nation, but were expelled from the Georgia General Assembly. But first, let's head to where Capitol correspondent Brenda Waters has spent the day keeping up with all the bills flowing through the two chambers. Hi, Brenda.
Hey, Donna. Well, a move to stop gambling expansion today. The coalition of legislators and community and religious leaders gathered to talk about the need to protect the state. From the south steps of the state capitol, the group expressed concerns over gambling expansion, saying it would create a slew of problems.
Gambling's bad for our economy. Gambling's bad for our families. Parents throwing away rent money, milk money. It's not good. Personal bankruptcies, crime.
Casey McClure spoke against gambling expansion from a personal experience, saying she was dragged into the sex industry years ago through gambling. She founded an organization to help other girls.
But if you allow gambling to continue and to happen and set up shop in Atlanta, Georgia, the sex industry is going to boom. It's already booming, but it's going to continue to boom more, and it's going to allow pimps to come from Alabama, from Las Vegas, from New York, wherever they can come from. They're going to bring girls here because Atlanta's going to be known as an opportunity for pimps to exploit young girls.
Representative Todd Jones, who sponsored the Mental Health Parity Act, which passed yesterday in the House, says gambling would derail those historic efforts.
We know, no matter what your opinion is on gambling, we know that almost every family in this state is impacted by either mental health or substance abuse. To suddenly put in some type of third entity, meaning gambling, to suddenly cause them to have, I'll say, a way to come off the path, that is intellectually dishonest. And for me, that's something that we cannot support. Thank you.
Of course, Donna, you will have more on this issue later in the show with your guest. Representative Wes Cantrell criticized Coca-Cola yesterday on the House floor, but after Coke announced they were ceasing operations in Russia, Cantrell came back today to toast the soft drink company.
Today I want to raise a bottle, first of all, to President Biden for cutting off all oil imports from Russia. And secondly, to our friends down the street, that certain soft drink company, for also cutting off all business with Russia. We're grateful for that. Let's continue to encourage private companies to make the right decisions and to support our government. Thank you.
House Bill 1437 passed 115 to 52 despite some opposition. This is a measure Representative Shaw Blackman says will keep money in our pockets.
Also been referred to as the Tax Reduction and Reform Act of 2022. A family of four, for instance, will not pay 1 penny, not 1 penny, of state income tax on their first $30,000 of income. That same family of four at $50,000 of income will see an over $400 reduction in taxes. And overall, it translates to an estimated $1 billion that we return to the taxpayers of Georgia.
Today I rise to ask you to vote no on HB 1437. And the reason why I'm asking you to vote no is because I'm asking you to vote no on raising taxes on over 500,000 Georgians. To be clear, HB 1437 is not a tax cut for all. Analysis done by the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute shows that this bill will actually raise taxes on hundreds of thousands of voters.
And in the Senate, a bill that impacts anyone who drives or has to deal with rush hour traffic, SB 203. That would allow drivers to use their cell phones and other electronic devices when they are at a stop, as long as they are attached to a windshield or dash mount.
What I'm asking for us to do is to revisit the hands-free law to make sure that what we do is not make criminals out of law-abiding citizens and make it safer to move the traffic and less distraction of driving. One of the things that I see happen a lot of times, people will get a text, their phone will ding, and so what do they, first thing they do while they're driving, they'll pick up their phone. That's the person I want going to jail. I want that person locked up and prosecuted. If they'd pull over on the side of the road, if they'd stop at a stop sign or they'd stop at a traffic light, while their phone's in a cradle, they should be able to look at that message, be able to hit that button and touch it.
Critics of the bill say that drivers are already too distracted when driving, and that statistics show that banning the use of cell phones and other devices while driving has decreased accidents and deaths.
The primary users of telephones in vehicles today, cell phones in vehicles today, are young people. And I'm here to tell you, they have a hard time driving without a telephone in the car. And for us to confuse them and change the rules in the middle of the game while they're trying to learn to drive is insanity. 16.7% of fatal large truck crashes are involved when people in passenger vehicles rear-end large trucks. 1/3 of all crashes in the United States are rear-end collisions. This is terrible legislation. This is unnecessary legislation. This is dangerous legislation.
Distracted driving causes people their lives every single year, and it happens in Georgia. This is not the right solution.
The bill failed to pass 14-35. Another bill on the floor today, SB 562, would ban Russian and Belarusian government-owned or controlled companies from bidding on Georgia state contracts.
As you know, all the horrendous activities going on over there and killing innocent women and children and men, this has to stop. If we can send a message, this is one of them that we need to send.
While we cannot dictate foreign policy in this chamber, we do have the authority to ensure that taxpayer dollars in this state do not go to fund this Belarusian oligarchy.
It was passed unanimously. An identical bill in regards to China passed earlier in the session. Well, that's my Capitol report. I also wanted to point out, mentioned today, is Scouts at the Capitol Day. And our Girl Scout leader extraordinaire, Donna, knows something about that.
I do. Thank you so much, Brenda.
All right.
We're going to look now at a couple of interesting bills. Joining me are Democratic Senator Tanya Anderson of Lithonia, who is chair of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, and Republican Representative Jesse Petrie of Savannah, chairman of the House Human Relations and Aging Committee. A long title. Welcome to Lawmakers to both of you. And I'm going to start with you. You have a bill to help military retirees with an income tax exemption. It's HB 1064. Tell us about it.
Yeah, HB 1064 is an issue that I've long worked on here, and thankfully Governor Kemp made this a priority when he ran for office, and this is his bill that I'm carrying this year. What it does is exempt $17,500 of military retirement income from state income tax. And additionally, if those individuals retire and work in Georgia, they can exempt another $17,500 of their earned income from state income tax. So in the aggregate, they can exempt $35,000 of their income from state income tax. All of that is exempted would be from military retirement. But they have to work in the state. And so this measure is designed to do several things. Number one, of course, to reward the men and women who have sacrificed the most for this country. But it's also targeted directly at economic development and workforce challenges. So the one thing we hear from all of our constituents back at home, everywhere, we need people to take the skilled jobs that we need. We need workforce. And so this job encourages those men and women who on average retire from a career of military service at 42 to 47. And so they're ready to start new careers. Encourages them to live and work in Georgia and take the jobs that are so desperately needed here by our industry and our businesses across the state.
About how many people are we talking about? Retirees?
Well,
Do you
there's
have any
currently
idea?
about 101,000 military retirees in the state of Georgia. A lot of people currently are going to border states. So when you represent a community like Savannah, like I'm on the border, it's very easy for people to cross a river and to cross a line and to save, currently 5.75. As you saw today, we're lowering that to 5.25. But it's easy to save that money by going to an adjacent state. And we're losing out on that. We're losing out on those workers and on those individuals to live in Georgia rather than adjacent border states, who in every instance, in every border state, have already addressed this issue.
Oh, wow. And I know Florida be one of them. And we've got a military retiree here, 21 years in the Air Force, right? Yes. All right. So I know that this is something that interests you.
Very exciting.
But I want to get to your bill, though. You have details on a bill, and before we get really into it, I want to give some background. Learn a little bit about it. In 1968, Georgia elected the first black lawmakers in the nation. It happened in Georgia on the grounds outside the state capitol right now. There is an intricate statue in memory of the men known as the original 33. They were called the Frederick Douglass Republicans. And the statue is called Expelled Because of Color, because they were expelled from the Georgia legislature in 1868, and the statue was commissioned in 1976 by the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, and you're the chair of it now, and unveiled in February of '78. From the bottom up, it shows the role of the Revolutionary War, Black church, our labor, and the right to vote. All of that is in there. You want to do something, you have a bill to do something similar inside the Capitol. Tell us about it.
Absolutely. So because this is a little-known Georgia history fact, it is very important that we understand that coming out of Black History Month, understanding that there were people who not only contributed but sacrificed so that other black lawmakers could be members of the Georgia General Assembly. And so this would honor them for their courage, for their bravery, for their sacrifice, for just staying there, sticking to it to make sure that there was opportunity for men and women of color. This will be a plaque. We do have a statue outside and a placard on marble, but this will be inside the Capitol. If you notice on the 4th floor, there are a lot of artifacts about voting rights and people of color voting and all the voting ballot box, an actual ballot box there. This would be, I don't know where the Georgia Building Authority will put it, but this will be inside the Capitol because very few people walk the grounds of the Capitol when they come do students come for a scavenger hunt or for some school activity. So this would bring light to this great group of people who contributed, as I said, to Georgia's history for Black Americans.
And it would be a plaque inside so that students can see it. And I should say that the statue is at the corner of Capitol and MLK, near the MLK statue.
Absolutely.
So if people have missed it, and I'll be honest, I had never seen it before today. So it's very interesting. Well, you're feeling good about that bill, huh?
I'm feeling great about it.
All righty. I want to turn back to you, Representative Petrie, to talk about a bill you have. You're a signer on a bill called HB 389, and it involves misclassification of some workers.
It did.
Who are these workers?
Yeah, great bill. That was Representative Todd Jones' bill. I was a co-sponsor of that and worked real hard to help to pass it. So what happens is we've got bad actors in in Georgia who intentionally misclassify workers. So there's absolutely the need across our workforce for employees and for independent contractors. But when we misclassify intentionally employees as independent contractors, we really cheat not only those employees, but we also cheat the competing businesses who are doing it right and following the law. And furthermore, we cheat the state treasury and we cheat state taxpayers. And so an employee who does not control when they come to work, when they leave, and who is clearly an employee by all of the standards set by the IRS, should be treated as such. And so what this bill does is attack bad actors by increasing penalties and making sure that we clarify language to make sure that we do find and halt these kinds of practices, which, by the way, I have to tell you, are commonplace.
In there, so you're going after the employer.
We're going after employers who intentionally misclassify workers. And again, it's not appropriate. So if you're trying to cut corners and not paying FICA taxes, Medicare, Social Security, not paying for workers' compensation insurance, unemployment insurance, all the things that you do to protect workers and society, then you're cheating everybody in the system. And what it really does, it bastardizes the beauty of the free market capitalist system. And so we have to keep that level playing field. And that's why that bill was very important to me.
Real quickly, what type of workers are we talking about?
Well, we're talking about workers really in any sector you might imagine, but you see this a lot in construction trades, welders, pipe fitters, et cetera, but far beyond that. I mean, there's a multitude of types of occupations where some employers, a minority of them, but will cut corners and cheat. And that's not good for society, and it's certainly not good for those employees. And I think this was good as a great bipartisan measure that is good to see, that we all agree this is not good practice and not good for society.
And not rideshare workers, people like that.
Not rideshare workers. Those are pretty solidly. They determine their own. Yeah, an Uber driver works when he feels like it, and he goes home when he feels like it. That's an independent contractor.
All right, we got some good bills. Thank you so much for coming in today. It always goes so quickly, but it's fascinating what you guys are working on.
Always great to be with you.
Thank you.
Well, when we come back, we'll focus on efforts to pass a bill to let voters decide whether to expand gambling in Georgia and more. You're watching Lawmakers on GPB.
Cigna is a proud partner of Georgia Public Broadcasting and Georgia Lawmakers. Cigna's mission is to improve the health, well-being, and peace of mind of those we serve. More at Cigna.com to learn how you can help support your employees' physical and emotional well-being.
Lawmakers is made possible by Georgia Farm Bureau. With over 80 years of helping everyone understand the importance of agriculture in our state. After all, ag is Georgia's #1 industry. Food and fiber production represents over $74 billion in output of Georgia's strong economy. The Georgia Farm Bureau legislative team works to represent producers across Georgia at the state capitol during the session and year-round. Georgia Farm Bureau, the voice of Georgia farmers.
Georgia Humanities, connecting people and communities across Georgia to encourage conversation, education, and understanding. Find out more at www.georgiahumanities.org.
We are the Southern Environmental Law Center. At SELC, we not only take on the toughest environmental challenges, we win, forcing the removal of more than 250 million tons of toxic coal ash, defeating repeated attempts to bring offshore drilling to our coasts, and securing clean air and water protections for communities across our region. Your most powerful environmental defender is rooted right here in the South.
Welcome back to Lawmakers. Joining me are Republican Senator Billy Hickman of Statesboro and Democratic Representative Billy Mitchell of Stone Mountain, the two Billies. Welcome to Lawmakers to both of you. You're both proponents of expanding gambling, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But first, let's hear from those who are strongly against anything that increases gambling beyond the Georgia lottery in the state. This morning, a coalition of legislators and community leaders held a press conference organized by Citizen Impact, Frontline Policy Council, and the Georgia Baptist Mission Board. Here's some of what lawmakers at the press conference had to say.
All business is a win-win situation.
In the gambling arena, it is a win-lose situation. There has to be a loser for there to be a winner. There has to be a loser for there to be a winner. There is no way for it to be beneficial. We will have to increase the staffing that we have for counseling for people who are gambling. And it just does not happen. And we need to realize that we are doing what we're doing is number one because we are a great place. And we need to provide workers to the places that need workers that benefit us.
We know that addiction is a real possibility when it happens, and that kind of thing affects your communities. It certainly affects your neighbors and your family, and it can affect your businesses as well, and those that are working in your businesses. So I have a real passion to avoid bringing this here. I think that there's enough opportunities throughout the nation if people want to gamble, that we have all those opportunities elsewhere, but Georgia does not need to be the site for all of the things that come along with it.
Casino gambling will compromise our values. You know, our First Lady and legislators standing with me for years have been working to shut down the epidemic of sex trafficking here in Atlanta. Atlanta's been a sex trafficking capital in the Southeast for years and years and years, and we were making tremendous strides to stop that. We bring in destination casinos that compete with Las Vegas, where prostitution's openly legal. The clientele coming to these casinos are used to going to places where prostitution is openly legal. The clientele and the gambling that attend these destination casinos expect that. If we bring in casinos, it's going to be rocket fuel for sex trafficking.
Being the #1 state for doing business 8 years in a row puts the state of Georgia in a position where we can pick and choose the industries, the companies, the folks that we want to come to our state. We are in no position to need this. The second question is it worth it? Absolutely not. I'll echo the refrain of my colleagues and those that spoke. Do the pros outweigh the cons in this? And absolutely not. The impact that it would have on our communities across this state would be absolutely detrimental. And to what end? To what end? How much more than #1 can we get? We're #1 in the nation for doing business as a state. So when we ask ourselves these two questions, do we need it? No. And is it worth it? No. So that is why we will continue that fight to keep this out of the state of Georgia for as long as we possibly can.
So we heard against, now we're going to hear about for, and I want to start with you, Senator Hickman. You have two bills, the SR 131 and SB 212, dealing with parimutuel racing. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, actually, it's SB 212. And first of all, what I'd like to clear up, first of all, is that in SB 212, casinos are not a part of parimutuel betting. It's horse racing and parimutuel betting, and casinos are out. There's no historic race machines, there's no slot machines, anything like that in this bill. I'm a CPA. I understand numbers very well, and I'm also a big horse racing fan. And when we started this, I told our leadership, I said, unless it made economic sense for Georgia, I didn't want to be a part of it. And I understand, I had to understand it had to create jobs and be economically viable. We hired Georgia Southern University to do an economic impact study on horse racing to Georgia. And we found out through the economic impact study that it will create more than 8,000 jobs in Georgia and be almost a $1.2 billion economic impact. Well, that's more jobs than Georgia Power has in Georgia. That's more jobs than Kennesaw State has, Synovus Bank, Chick-fil-A, Lockheed Martin. And the biggest part of this is there's not going to be any tax incentives for these racetracks. There's not going to be tax credits for it. It's all going to be private dollars. And the main thing, as I've said, I want to emphasize there is no casinos involved in this horse racing.
And the money would go toward education, the money that comes in, education and health care, right? Is that what we're looking at with your bill?
Yes, ma'am. It would go to education, health care, rural development programs, including but not limited to programs to provide broadband and communication technology of rural areas.
And it covers a lot of areas. Representative Mitchell, we've had you on the show before. You favor expanding gambling. Let's talk about some of the things that we heard about. that'll bring in organized crime, it'll bring in, human trafficking, all of that into Georgia?
Well, let me just say, Donna, my friends who are opposed to this legislation, and I think they're well-intentioned, the reality is that there are no statistics that would suggest that there would be any more crime than there is now. Let me put it out front. If everyone gambled like I do, that the industry would be in trouble, and certainly it wouldn't last. That model would not last. But no one can deny what the lottery, and which is gambling, has done for the Hope Scholarship into our universities and colleges in Georgia. What we are planning to do here, my feeling is that Georgians should be able to do what Georgians do for the benefit of Georgians, regulated by Georgians. If you don't believe that, the converse of that is true, which means you feel that Georgians should go to other states where they would be regulated by other states for the benefit of other states. And I just believe that the statistics suggest that they're doing it now in any event. So we may as well let it be for the benefit and regulated by Georgians.
And that it's happening now, and the money would come into Georgia, and that they don't go to other states, I guess, right?
That is absolutely correct. I even had a constituent write to me about this notion of being addicted to gambling, and they said there's monies that are put in place to deal with gambling addictions. If it were not for that, she claimed, her husband would not have been able to get the kind of help and resources that he needed. Therefore, if he was gambling out of state, he would not have been able to get those kinds of resources and help that he needed. So I believe that the government ought not be strong enough to tell folk that they cannot enjoy gaming within the state.
And right now what we're talking about is getting it to the point where the voters make a decision, right? On
Yes.
your bill and anything else dealing with gambling, right?
Yes, ma'am. It would be a constitutional amendment that we would vote on in November, and then at the most there'd be 5 racetracks in Georgia, and that would be determined by the economic viability of those tracks, and it would be determined by the county governments of those areas to determine whether that track would be in their area or not.
Have you determined where those tracks
No,
will
ma'am.
go?
No, ma'am.
Okay, how will that decision be? Will there be a commission that looks into that?
I'm sure it's going to be a private track, so there'll be an economic impact study done by the companies to determine where the most viable locations are.
So 5 is what you're talking about, and where they are going to go in the state is something that would be determined based on whoever would bring them in.
That's right.
Where is there parimutuel racing around us in other states?
Florida, Kentucky, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, Iowa, New York, Illinois,
Massachusetts,
California,
Yes.
Arkansas.
So we're seeing it all over.
Yes, ma'am.
And you seem to think that's totally different from gambling when it comes to casinos. Are you looking at it similar to the lottery as gambling?
Well, it's not a situation where people just go in, you pull a lever, and you've got to study a racing form in order to make the bet and all. So it's not. A lot of people are really concerned about casinos, and this is no part of casinos.
Yeah, I have to say that we usually have a session where things move along, and right before crossover day, gambling becomes a big deal. This year is no different. How do you feel going into Tuesday?
Well, I must say that when you balance the arguments to the economic opportunities that Georgians can realize, the jobs that Georgians can realize, and that's what balances for me. When folks are faced with great economic opportunities, including jobs, it can turn a community around. And on balance, I think this is a good thing for Georgia.
Okay, we'll see how it does. We've run out of time. We're going to have you come back and talk about it. We'll see how it goes.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on the show, and thank you for joining us tonight for Lawmakers. Look for our Lawmakers Capital Report on Friday at the end of the PBS NewsHour, and we'll see you on Tuesday for our special 1-hour-long crossover day edition of Lawmakers. Have a good evening.